So we're reading Mishna Gimel of Perek Tetvav, chapter 15 of Masechet Shabbat, and that's a halacha that has implications today also. מקפלין את הכלים אפילו 4 ו5 פעמים ומציעין את המיטות מלילי שבת לשבת, אבל לא משבת למוצאי שבת. They say you could fold clothes, garments, even 4 or 5 times, and you could make the beds from Friday night for Shabbat morning, but not from Shabbat to Motzei Shabbat. According to Rabbi Ishmael, you can do it from Yom Kippur to Shabbat, and then they speak also something about the sacrifices. So, if we move from the Mishnah to today's modern halacha, there's a ton of halachot that revolve around the issue of what you're allowed to do on Shabbat that has ramifications on Motzei Shabbat. For example, if you travel on Motzei Shabbat, can you pack your suitcase on Shabbat? Right? Doesn't sound like that. What if you want to make the beds? Like the room is messy and you want to make the beds on Shabbat? According to this Mishnah, you shouldn't do it. What about folding garments, folding clothes? Here it says that you could do it 4 and 5 times, but the practice among most Orthodox Jews today is that you don't do it on Shabbat. Some people don't even fold their talit. I'll get to that, back to that, but first I want to look like the comparison to the Mishnah. The interesting thing is the Mishnah, when we read this line, מקפלים את הכלים אפילו 4 ו5 פעמים, you fold it 4 or 5 times. First of all, the Mishnah says you could do it. And why? So why wouldn't we do it? But second, which is more problematic, why would anyone fold it 4 or 5 times? You fold it once and you put it in the, right? True? No, not true? You do it 4 or 5 times? Not okay, so you have OCD? No? I guess that's no, because you fold it. No, it's not good. Open it again. That's understandable. Okay, that's you. Okay. So the Mishnah is written for you. Fine. Someone once asked me, why don't people fold their talit on Shabbat? Especially in the Ashkenazi synagogues, if you go, see people leave the talit all over. My grandfather, alav hashalom, used to be very upset with that. Hacham Shol Fetaya said this is disrespectful to your talit. It's a garment that we use during tefillah. You have to fold it nicely and put it in this. So that's always was my minhag. And someone once came to me in the synagogue and says, "Why do you do that? We don't do it on Shabbat." I told him, "I'll tell you why you don't do it on Shabbat. I'll tell you the true reason." This is the thing. A lot of men are being asked at home by their wives to help with the dishes, with folding garments. They say, "We don't know how to do that." And they start washing dishes, they break them. They fold things, it's crooked. So their wives say, forget it, I don't want to. My uncle actually did it to his wife. She exempted him. She says, don't touch the kitchen. Don't touch don't touch anything. Okay, but now, every morning the men come to shul. They use the talit, and they know very well how to fold it perfectly. But the women are not there, so they don't know that the men know how to do it. But on Shabbat, the women are in Azat Nashim. The women are in the synagogue, and they look at the men and they say, wow, you know how to fold the talit. Okay, wait until
so you get home.
I have enough for you to do. So the rabbi said, don't fold it on Shabbat. This is, to protect the Shabbat. But okay. No, that's not that. Of course, it's
the Ashkenazis say they don't fold it.
No,
they come back and they work in the afternoon.
Right. Yeah. So, but what was your rabbi saying is true. The answer to all these... Wait.
They were in the afternoon.
Sablanut. The answer to to the question I raised before is that when the Mishnah, there's a problem, what we call lost in translation. That what they write here when they say mekapelim et hakelim, the translation is not to fold. I translated it like that because that's the usage in the modern Hebrew, and already in medieval times, this is how people understood it, because there was no other things that you used to do with the garments. You fold them and you put them aside. So, rabbi-ovadia in his commentary over the Mishnah, it says, "Begadim sheposhtan, מקפלין אפילו 4 ו5 פעמים כדי לחזור וללובשם בו ביום." That you could do, why you fold it, so it will be ready to be reworn and worn again on that same day. And it says, "ולא שנו אלא באדם אחד, אבל בשני בני אדם לא, שנראים כמתקנין. And he says, and that only applies, that permission to fold the garments is only if one person does it. But if two people do it together, it's too much. It seems like they're doing professional work. And it says, באדם אחד נמי לא אמרן, אלא בבגדים חדשים שהם קשים, ואינם ממהרים לקמות. אבל אין ישנים כי פעולם מתקנן תפי. But that permission is only when you fold new garments, because they don't need the folding that much. But if you do it with old garments, it's too much of an improvement to the garment. And that, even when we say that new garment can be folded on Shabbat, it's only with white garments, but not dyed one. שהצבועים כי פעולם מתקנים ביותר. ובלבנים נמי לא אמרן. And even with white garments, we only allow you if you have no other clothes to wear. But if you have other clothes to wear, you cannot do it. All that is confusing, right? So they keep limiting it. Only one person, only new garments, only white, and only if you have no other. So what is left? That's why people say, Chalin, I don't want to touch anything, right? I want to touch anything on Shabbat. So it's important to see the Talmud here to understand what is the what is really Kippur. So in the Talmud Yerushalmi they say this: En mekapelin b'Shabbat b'shnayim, ve'od mekapel al safsela keman di'inun teren. It says you don't do it with two people, and if you do it on a bench, it's as if you're doing it with two people. The explanation here is that what they call Kippur is not what we call Kippur, meaning it's not folding, it's pressing. They would press garments either under heavy weights or the bench. They turn the bench, or they stretch on the bench and put weights on it, or sometimes even roll it between two rollers to make sure that it's smooth. And that was done to extend the life of the wool. Remember, we're not talking about synthetic garments. They don't have that. They use wool, linen, cotton. Those are the garments that they use. And the Gemara and the Mishna has lengthy discussions on the quality of the garments that one has. Levanim are always better than sevurim. White garments are always better than dyed garments, because the dye usually is there to hide the defects in the garment. So if you have white garment, I mean you use the purest materials. For example, in the Mishna Masechet Yoma, which speaks about the service of the Kohen on Yom Kippur, they speak about the Kohanim and the fine garments that they would wear on Yom Kippur. So the Mishnah says that one of the cost of the white robe of the Kohen was at something like 800 golden coins for the one he wore in the morning, and 1,200 for the one he wore in the afternoon. And then the one Kohen who was extremely wealthy did something even more than that, and then he would give it as a donation to the temple. And finally they speak about Rabbi Elazar ben Harsom, who was, in the terms of those days, a billionaire. So his mother made him a robe that was worth 10,000 golden coins. But when he was about to wear it, the other Kohanim says, no, you can't wear it. It's transparent. It's disrespectful. So they pay a lot of attention to the quality of the garments. And not only they did that, it was a symbol of wealth, but a lot of people didn't have enough clothes. This is something else that we have to understand when we think about garments or everyday life. When we read the Mishnah and when we look at our life today, the difference is tremendous. Those are things that we don't relate to. Because today you go and you could buy anything for $5. In some places, $1 you could buy a shirt. We pay a little more than that, but no one in the circles that we know has only one shirt that he uses both Shabbat and during the week. But back then, it was a reality, to the extent that the Gemara says, you must wash your clothes on Thursday so you will have something clean on Shabbat. They don't mean your other garments. No, the one that you wore Sunday to Thursday in the field wash it so you have something for Shabbat. So when they say mekapelin, I mean they wore it, it doesn't look good, you stretch it, you put weights on it, so the next time you wear it, it looks good. You come back into the house, you take it off because you don't want it to wear down. And what do you do with it? Again, you stretch it, you put weights on it. So arba'a v'chamisha pa'amim, why is it needed? Because you leave the house on Shabbat, average 4 or 5 times. One Friday night, then twice for the prayers, and maybe go visit people. In between, you want to make sure that it's stretched. It has nothing to do with folding. And here the Gemara says this, and this is in the Talmud Bavli, the Talmud of Babylonia. First, that's where they bring all these restrictions. Amrei debi Rabbi Anai. That is probably coming from a more affluent period in time of Rabbi Anai, because the Mishnah, remember, was written around the time of the destruction. The economic situation was not that good. There's a story also about the student of Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi El-Ai that only had one talit, so they would all share it, one garment, they mean a robe. And Rabbi Yehuda himself and his wife only had one robe, so they would share it. When someone stays home and wear house clothes, and the other one goes out to the market, he wears a robe or she wears a robe, the same one, unisex. I mean, it's not a new invention, it was already back then. So the Gemara says this, Tana shel bet Rabban Gamliel lo hayu mekapelin klei lavan shelehem mipnei she'alehem le'achlif. They say the people of the household of Rabban Gamliel, who was the president of the Sanhedrin, was almost at the status of a prince. They never did kippur. They never pressed their white garments because they had enough. So they bring them as an exception. Here's a very wealthy family that the whole household has enough to wear. Amar Rav Huna, im yesh lo le'achlif yachalif, ve'im en lo le'achalif yeshalshel bivgadav. He says. So Rashi explained, what does it mean? If one has enough garments except for what he wore during the week to wear, he could change them on Shabbat. But if not, meaning let him open the seams, or usually they would wear the robe in a way that's folded, maybe something like a toga or like a shawl or something like that. So they would change the way that you put the garment on you, so the dirty parts don't show. That's for Shabbat. Says, but that seems arrogant because only the wealthy people would walk like that. So you realize, again, when I'm saying about the reality of life is so different. They, you know how in a restaurant the guy comes and says, the tablecloth, he calls the waiter, he says, what's the problem? He says, the tablecloth is dirty. He says, what do you want me to do? We don't have another one. He said, at least turn it to the other side. He says, did you ever hear of a tablecloth with 3 sides? Right? Where else are you going to turn it to? So the same thing is what they had to do. Some people were so poor that they had to wear the clothes differently, so it would seem as if it's clean clothes. But that was a style that was reserved for the wealthy. Because people will know that he only does so on Shabbat. So it's okay because they know it's not out of arrogance. But I want to go back 1 second to the question of preparation from Shabbat to the day following Shabbat, and here's something that one of the commentators, Melechet Shlomo, says. He says, "Utmehani." He writes Rabbi Shlomo Cyrilio in the 15th, 16th century. וכן כתב הרב רבי יוסף ז"ל, "ותמהני, האך נהגו אנשים השתה להציע עמיתות משבת למוצאי שבת, ואין פוצה פה ומצפצף, ונלאיתי למצוא דין זה בספרי הפוסקים." I looked through all the books to see how can they explain the custom of women today. Today was back then. Today men and women do it, of cleaning the house and setting the beds and making sure that everything looks right. Because you're doing it for Motzei Shabbat. You're not going to sleep until Motzei Shabbat. That's why you're setting the bed. It says, I couldn't find davar tamua me'od be'ainai. It's very, very strange for me. He says he found in the Talmud Yerushalmi Matzi'in et hamitot miyom tov leShabbat, that you could set the beds from Yom Tov for the Shabbat that follows right away. And he says maybe that's the reason that people did it for Shabbat, on Shabbat. מפני שגם כן היא צורך השבת, שרגילים בני אדם לנוח מעט ולישן בשבת, כאשר אמרו בעלי הרמז, שינה בשבת תענוג. He says maybe the reason that they set the beds Shabbat morning because they're going to sleep again on Shabbat. As people say, Shabbat is the initials of Shena b'Shabbat ta'anug, sleeping on Shabbat is a pleasure. That problem, though, is discussed by other rabbis. One of the rabbis who discussed it is Rabbi Nisim Palachi of Turkey. He was the father or grandfather of the famous Rabbi Haim Palachi. And he brings up that question that it is well known that in many Orthodox communities that when you have when Yom Tov comes, you have 2 Yamim Tovim. You can't set things up from the first Yom Tov to the second Yom Tov. You do Rav Tafshilin, it only allows you to prepare from Yom Tov to Shabbat. But one Yom Tov to the other, you cannot. And this especially is a problem on Pesach, because you have second Seder, right? And they tell you can't prepare anything during the first day. So you have to wait for the first Yom Tov to be over, and then set the table, put everything on, and the second Seder is delayed sometimes an hour and a half, 2 hours after sunset, which is very, very late. And he says that in Izmir, and other cities in Turkey, people used to do everything on the first Yom Tov to make sure that the table is ready on time. You could do Kiddush the moment you come from the synagogue. Try to understand where does it come from. And his answer was that that's an interesting answer. He says, since people don't have big houses where they could set table for the first night here, and another table for the second night there, and the beds here, they're limited in space. So what happens? They get up in the morning, they go to shul, and all day they're thinking, how am I going to do that? They're under stress of just contemplating the difficulties of the logistics of getting everything in time. He says that state of mind undermines the whole idea of the pleasure of Yom Tov and Shabbat. He says since what they're doing is not something that is per se forbidden, we're not talking about cooking or lighting fire or anything like that. It's just a regular act that usually is, if it was for the Shabbat itself, it would be allowed, but it's for the next day. He says since doing that relieves your stress and makes you enjoy the Shabbat more, it is allowed. So that's an interesting concept that, of course, it's flexible. Depends on the situation, but people could use wisely to alleviate stress and understand that when we don't prepare from Yom Tov to another Yom Tov, or from Yom Tov to Shabbat, that's only, or from Shabbat to Motzei Shabbat, it's only when the act is forbidden, even if it was done for Shabbat itself. But as long as there's a way to do it on Shabbat for Shabbat, if it relieves your stress, you could do it for Motzei Shabbat. Baruch Adonai, L'olam, Amen, V'Amen.